Campbell. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Hope and Hustle podcast here. So, really focusing in on topics of faith, recovery, community. When Bo and I were sitting down and kind of lining out the folks that we wanted to sit down and talk with, you were actually one of the first names that came to my mind. And for obvious reasons, right? I know you from Next Step. You've been an instructor there for a couple of years now. But the more I thought about it, the more I talked with Bo about it, I was like, I really don't know a whole lot about John Campbell. So thought it'd even be cooler to have you in here just to learn more about you.
Yeah.
Right. So pastor, First Baptist Church here in Terre Haute, right?
That's right.
So if you could maybe give us some backdrop on your faith journey and how that's led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I'm a Terre Haute lifer. I've lived in this community since I was born.
Is that what we call a Hoshian?
Yeah. I'm a purebred Hoshian.
Okay.
My parents are Hoshians. I'm a Hoshian. My kids are Hoshians. So the only time I haven't lived here is I went to Purdue University for my undergraduate and lived up in West Lafayette for about 5 years. But other than that, I've been in Terre Haute and was raised in a Christian family. We went to a small church way out in the country north of here. It was a good church in some ways, had its struggles in others, but it was a church that was super heavily invested in missions. It's the only church I've ever encountered that gave over 40% of their tithes and offerings to missions.
Wow.
It was a big number.
Wow.
And so that was always a part of the Christianity that I've grown up in and experienced. But ministry, being a pastor, definitely wasn't on my radar. When I went to Purdue, I went to do pharmacy. My grandfather was a research chemist for Eli Lilly, and he asked me one day, "What are you going to do when you graduate high school?" And I said, "I don't know." He goes, "What kind of job do you want?" I said, "I don't know. I just wanted to play baseball forever. That's what I wanted to do." And he said, "Oh, be a research chemist like I am. You'll make a lot of money." So I said, "Okay, sounds good." So applied Purdue, got in to their pre-pharmacy program, and found out real quick I didn't like it. It was a lot of math, man. I didn't know all the physics and math and chemistry that pharmacists have to deal with to get their education. But that move to Purdue was also the first time I was ever away from family, really. And for me, it was a big moment in my life because it was the first time I was away from all the things that I had built my identity around. I always made friends easy. I was good at baseball. That got me attention from teachers, from friends, from girls, and I was always good at school. Like school was just easy. I didn't have to try in school. And then I went to Purdue. I didn't know anybody. They invited me to come to their walk-ons for baseball and got down to me and one guy, and he made it and I didn't. And so I didn't have that anymore. And Purdue was hard. You have to actually study and go to class in college. I learned in my first semester the hard way. And so for me, it was this total breakdown of all the things I had built. This is why I'm valuable around. I didn't have anymore. And the easiest way to make friends was to go to parties. And to do all the things everybody else seemed to be doing. And so I got involved in that. I guess it was February of my freshman year, had a knock on the door. Some of my friends, to make an impression on some other friends and some girls, had taken them out to a fraternity. We'd stolen a bunch of their booze, took it back to our place, and started our own party. And that's when the cops knocked on the door because we were being too loud. And so I spent that night in jail, and that was rough for me because that was like a gut punch. It was. You've probably heard this story before. I'm not going to tell you it was rock bottom because it wasn't. In that moment, I thought it was.
Yeah.
But I went home. My parents drove all the way up there. They bailed me out. My dad told me I'll never do that again, and I believed him. And I sat on the floor of my dorm that morning, and I prayed. I never stopped believing in God, but I prayed, and I kind of let God off the hook. I said, hey, I know I've screwed up. Whatever plans you had for me in life, I set you free from them because I know I've messed up. I'm not worth it. And lived the next 2.5 years of my life like that was true, that I didn't matter to God. And so I didn't matter to myself, didn't matter to other people. Dealt with some depression, dealt with a lot of low self-esteem and low self-worth, which just kind of pushed me further into the things that got me in trouble. And it was really like the lowest part of my life. And even being around people just felt completely and utterly alone. In the midst of that, about 2 years into it, my former youth pastor called me and said he had moved on from the youth ministry at the church I went to while I was in youth ministry, to go run a youth camp in Green Lake, Wisconsin. And he called me and said, hey, would you ever be interested in coming up for the summer and working at this youth conference? His name is Lance Percy. I owe him a lot. And I said, Lance, I don't know, like the John you knew isn't here anymore. Like, you don't know me. And his response was, well, why don't you come up here so I can get to know you? And I didn't want to say yes, but I did. And then I did it again the next summer. And those 2 summers were transformational for me. One, it removed me from the environment I was in. And I made some new friends that were healthy people, which opened my eyes to how unhealthy the people I was choosing to be friends with were, and how unhealthy I was. Going back into that environment in West Lafayette after those summers up in Wisconsin, it was night and day, and it was a struggle of why do I stay in this? Why am I doing this? Is this who I really want to be? Yeah. But I still struggled with that identity of who I am and that self-worth of thinking I am more than this. And people were really kind to me. There were a lot of people that loved me through this, and I didn't trust their love, so I didn't take it, wouldn't accept it. I thought they were trying to manipulate me somehow, or I thought if they actually loved me, or if they actually knew everything about me, they wouldn't love me. Yeah. They just don't know everything, But those 2 summers up in Wisconsin were eye-opening. And I had a moment the second year, and I was talking to these 2 people. They were really struggling. They didn't want to go home from this week they'd been up there because home was so terrible. The environment they lived in, the adults around them, they didn't want to go home. And we had a conversation, and when they left, I was just sitting on this bench. It was in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, out in the woods, and I'm just sitting on this bench. There's pine trees all around. And it was the first time in my life I felt what I would say the real presence of Christ. Mm-hmm. And with an awareness that I was being spoken to. And what I was told, it was kind of remember that prayer you prayed? You see how you're wrong? Mm. You see how you're wrong. And I was baptized when I was like 6 years old, but I tell people that was the day I became a Christian. When I was 24 years old, because that was the day Jesus moved from being someone I knew a lot of things about to being someone that I knew personally. And it was a 180 for me in my life in that moment. I went back, I broke friendships. I told people, and it was hard to do it, but I told people I'd been friends with a long time, as things are, I can't continue to have a relationship with you, which was scary because I didn't want to feel alone, Yeah. But it was the beginning of making new relationships and getting myself healthy. I came back to Terre Haute not long after that. I began volunteering at Terre Haute First Baptist Church, which is where I now pastor. I did community service at that church.
When you were in trouble?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Come full circle.
Yeah.
I had a guy a couple years ago. He came and he was all nervous, and you could tell there was something that was hard for him to say, and then he kind of said it. He'd gotten a DUI. Was there any way? I know you won't let me, but if there was any way the church could come up with some communities, and I said, of course we would. I did my community service here, and he was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
can I say no? So I started volunteering there, specifically with their youth ministry. After about a year of that, their youth pastor moved to take a job closer to home, and they asked if I would just like kind of be the interim. I believe the words were, will you keep the ship afloat until we can hire somebody else? And so I agreed and started that work. And after about 8 or 9 months, the search committee that had been looking and interviewing came to me and said, we've been looking at people, we've been interviewing, but we really think we want to hire you. Would you want to do it? And that began kind of a internal search process for me of, am I supposed to do this? I was working full-time at Hamilton Center on their inpatient unit at the time. I worked at Hamilton Center for about 7 or 8 years in case management, and said yes. I have a hard time saying no. So I said yes, and began that work part-time, and not long into that, started discerning, am I supposed to go to seminary? I was always someone that thought, no, you don't need seminary. The disciples didn't have seminary. They just had something better. They walked around with Jesus for 3 years.
Yeah.
But decided to go to seminary, went through that process, got my Master's of Divinity, and after that, the church hired me full-time into an associate role. About 5 years of that, our senior pastor retired, and they started a search process for a new senior pastor, and I threw my name in the hat, and they hired me, and I've worked there. It'll be 18 years this fall now. So that's a glimpse into the journey, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. One, because again, it just gives us some greater context. But two, it's just so refreshing to know you as I've known you, right, as Pastor John, right, who comes to Next Step and teaches, to now know that you're actually a person with lived experience.
Yeah.
Right? You've had struggles of your own.
Yeah.
I was oblivious, well, I just didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's so refreshing just to hear that, right? And to know, like, from your church roots, which you expressed were very missionary, coupled with your lived experience, and even your work at Hamilton Center, right? Like, it's now no surprise to me that you found your way to Next Step, right? In the role you are there. How's that been for you?
I love it. I love it. It's so. Can I tell you how I got to Next Step?
Please.
How this happened? So when I found a seminary to go to, it was important to me that the seminary that the education I was going to get was going to be mission focused. And so my MDiv is from Wesley Seminary, which is in northern Indiana, up on the campus of Indiana Wesleyan. And it was kind of two reasons I chose it. One was they were pioneers in some of the distant education stuff, so I could do a lot of things online. And then I'd have to go up there for intensives and live up there, but come home. But I was allowed. I was married. We had a brand new baby. I was trying to get seminary done before he would remember that I wasn't home. Yeah. And that school allowed me to do both, to be home and be there. But they were also very missional in their theology, and that's something I thought I wanted. A change happened for me in the work of ministry, where my mind moved from mission being always somewhere else to mission being here.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to be, I guess, nominated or recommended for a program called the Wabash Pastoral Leadership Program. It's funded by Lilly Endowment, and they pull together a small cohort of pastors from across the state of Indiana from all denominations, non-denominational. It's very ecumenical. And it's a 2-year process where they walk you through training in adaptive leadership, but in the context of your community and the issues that are specific to Indiana. And so we would meet every 2 months, and each meeting would have a focus. So one meeting might be poverty, one meeting might be education, one meeting might be addictions, et cetera. And they would bring in state leaders to meet with you and spend a couple days with you. And in that process, I was just heavily encouraged to believe that pastors have a power in a community. And one of the greatest powers a pastor has in a community is the power to convene. That we are able to pull people together for the good of the community. And so as I was learning that, I just started trying it out. If they told us, hey, this might work, I came here and tried to do it. And so one of the things they encourage us to do was just to start learning more about our communities. And so I came back from my very first meeting and I called the mayor's office and said, he didn't know who I was. I never met him. I didn't think it would even work. I was like, can I meet with you? Can I have 30 minutes? And he said yes. And I asked him the same questions I've asked everybody since. And it's, what do you love about Terre Haute? What are the good things that are going for us? What are the challenges we have? What are your hopes and dreams for our community? And what are the barriers that we face to get there? And then the last question is always, how can churches help? Because I don't know a whole lot about city planning and that kind of stuff, but I know how to ask churches to help. Yeah. And our churches are full of people that like to help. Yeah. And as I went around all these different community leaders, the mayor, school corporation, business owners, nonprofit leaders, I asked them the same questions and I kept getting the same answers. I kept being told that our city struggles financially because we don't have industry. And back then, I was told we're not even bidding on jobs because we don't believe we have a workforce to fill the jobs that these industries would create because we don't think there's enough people that could pass a drug test.
Wow. And
so addictions was mentioned in every single interview that I had as an issue here in the community, along with child poverty. And I got the phrase broken homes a lot, however you want to interpret that. But and so I went back to our church and sat down and thought, okay, these are the issues that are obviously real in our community because it's what everybody in the community is saying. What is my church doing to participate in that? And that led to a partnership that we have with Camp Navigate that's blossomed and grown and is really awesome. They're in our building doing after school care every Monday through Friday, all during the school year. And then they fill our building with kids with their summer programming through the summer. And it's helping teach kids soft skills and how to do an interview and how to budget and things that it's a long-term investment of things that we think, all right, here, this is going to be good for our community down the road. Yeah. And then when I thought about addictions, I felt like I was sitting at the bottom of a mountain looking up at the top. It's easy in my church, in my context, and I would imagine in most churches, it's easy to say, let's do something for the kids and to get people and say, hey, we want kids in our building. And everybody's like, oh, we love kids. It sounds great. Yeah. To say, let's bring people struggling with addictions into our building. People aren't quite as comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing I realize is that most people don't know what it's like. They may know someone distantly, but in my church context specifically, most people don't know what it's like to have that struggle. And so there was a fear of people.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that part of our faith and what God does is what's he say? Perfect love casts out fear. And so how do we use love to get through this fear, how to love people? And so the first thing I thought was, well, I don't know how to start an addictions ministry. I don't know if the church is ready to start an addictions ministry. It wouldn't be good for anybody. And so at the time when I was trying to figure out who in the community is already doing this well, and let's go learn from them and let's see how we can help them. Because that's kind of been our model. If we're not already doing it, who's already doing it well, and let's go see how we can help them. I would say most of our major effective ministries at the church right now started that way. Not because we started something from scratch, but we said, who's doing it well? How can we help?
Yeah.
And things grew from there. But at that time where I was really struggling, with Hamilton Center, trying to find placement for people moving out of the inpatient unit, I had worked with a lot of the different addictions providers, recovery providers, and to be frank, wasn't very impressed with most of them, and saw the same people over and over again coming out of those same places.
Yeah.
And it was at that time that a member of my church, Jan Spidell,
She was my therapist in there.
okay,
Yeah.
Jan reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're looking for like someone that could help teach every once in a while. Would you have any interest in just meeting with Dana to talk about that?" So I was like, "Yeah, like Jan, you don't even know what's been
Yeah.
going on in my head, you know." So yeah, I would. So then I met Dana. I listened to her story. I discovered her heart and passion, man,
Yeah.
for next step in recovery and this ministry. And she wanted me to step in and start teaching this boundaries class, which I didn't feel equipped to do. And so I asked, and she agreed. And so I went and sat through her class, I think 4 or 6 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
I just went and listened to her teach. And which was helpful to me also. It helped my boundaries.
Yeah.
But it really gave me the confidence that I could do this. And now I go every Tuesday, and it's a breath of fresh air for me. I signed up to be a pastor because I love people, and I know what it feels like to be crushed by guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to feel crushed by guilt and shame. I want everyone to feel the freedom that I've felt because of Christ and my faith. And so at church, there's a lot of things I get to do as a pastor that I really love doing. There's a lot of things that it's like, man, I don't care what color the paint is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So when I get to go to Next Step, and it's relational, and you get to work with people who really are trying, and see them finding the value in themselves, it's a breath of fresh air every week for me. So I love going.
So prior to your first meeting with Dana, shadowing her and whatnot, did you have any exposure prior to that to this concept of boundaries or Henry Cloud or that curriculum?
No, this was brand new.
Brand new?
Brand new. It was, I'd had some things that were like a little bit similar, but different phrases, different words.
Sure.
But it was pretty new. It was pretty new to me. But it was, so one of the things that I think is neat is I had the same experience listening to Dana teach that I think I've seen people have in the boundaries classes. I've taught the same curriculum, which is, it's almost like that light bulb moment where you're like, oh, I already know this. I just didn't have words for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've felt this. I just didn't understand it, because it's real. They're there they're there, whether we're aware or not,
Yeah.
you know? So.
With the church, so like I think about as someone who's in recovery, right? So I was at Next Step for 9 months, 6 years ago. One of my barriers for coming to, I'm not even gonna say God, for coming to church, just getting in the building, which is kind of where things start to happen, was like worried about feeling judged by the members in the pews, right? And you kind of mentioned that, and I thought it was beautiful that you say, like, I don't know if we're ready for this. Like, I don't know what that takes. So if someone's listening who maybe has a loved one who's in addiction or recovery, and maybe they're in that place of like, they just don't get it. They think, oh, you should just stop. Why don't they just stop? What would you say to that person sitting in the pew who maybe hasn't had that life experience like you've had before to relate to them?
Well, you've got to get to know them.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the biggest barriers that keeps us from loving and serving other people and just valuing people and treating them with the respect that every human deserves, is that we We don't understand, and so we're afraid.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long, it was a long time ago. I watched a show on PBS, and they were interviewing a woman, and I'm not going to be able to remember her name. It's been so long, but she was retired from the CIA, and her job with the CIA during the war in Afghanistan was to interview terrorists right after we had captured them. She was the interrogator. And so it was this long, hour-long interview where they asked her a bunch of questions about that. And at the very last question, they said, after all of this, and the way the guy phrased the question, he said, after sitting across the table from some of the worst humans in the world, what have you learned? And she didn't even hesitate. She said, I learned that if I grew up where they grew up, being taught what they were taught, having the experiences they experienced, I would have made the same decisions they made.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me, even to this day. And it's that old adage, until you walk a mile in someone's shoes, you just don't know. And so I would just encourage people to understand that we're all human. We all struggle with different things.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about Next Step from the very first time I met with Dana was Dana emphasized to me, everyone's addicted to something, and I think that's true. And when I can see me and you and me, it increases my empathy, and it allows me to see you as a human instead of something to fear.
Yeah.
It allows me to see you as a human instead of a project to fix.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's healthy either, to look at people like that. And I think it's hard to do if you don't have those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, just as someone who's in business, if I meet with somebody and I start to get to know them or something who doesn't know anything about my story, and I hit with them with, I did 9 months in rehab and went to jail for cocaine, that shocked impact of that just tells me that maybe they wouldn't have related to me if I came in like that, right? They wouldn't have related to me, but now they can. But I'm the same, right? I'm still Bo. Yeah. So I love that. I love that perspective of just have the coffee with them, don't judge, and just get to know people. And then I think we were kind of talking about out there how that starts to reveal parts of ourselves, right? You start to help someone else, and then you're, oh wow, I didn't know I needed boundaries too. You start teaching them. So.
Yeah, and I think, that fear that we keep talking about, that's basically, we're talking about fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
That's usually 99.9% of the fear, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, what is what's the remedy?
Mm-hmm.
Sit down and get to know somebody.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a podcast with fancy lights either. A cup of coffee in a corner of Java Hode or Starbucks. And I remember how impactful it was for me when I was going to Christway, and it was Mark Moore. He took me out to eat at Pizza Hut for the first time. And I remember scraping together quarters to try to, pay for my meal, and to think that, oh man, this guy who goes to church is going to take me out for dinner, and what I do. It's just as scary for the person who's in addiction as it is for the person who's in the pews and never put substance in their body. So we have to remember that they're feeling that same timidness too. So when you get two people with timidness, then you have awkwardness, right? And then you have lack of comfortability. You don't have ABC, acceptance, belonging, community. And that's what's needed. So just getting on the same level as people, I think, is kind of what it seems like to me is what you're saying.
And that fear it's there in a lot. We've tried, one of the things at our church we try to be is it's a big goal for us. Intergenerational is our word, which we're multi-generational. We have everybody there, all ages, but we want people to have relationships across generations because we think we have a lot we can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I found out real quick, when you set an older person down with one of our youth, for example, they're both nervous. Mm-hmm. They're both intimidated. And often our youth would think, I'm the one that's intimidated. And I've had to tell them, no, that 60-year-old across from you is scared to death of you because they don't understand you. Yeah. They don't understand your world. They don't know what the words you're saying mean or the music you listen to is. And so you both are experiencing the same fear and anxiety and awkwardness. And sometimes it's just good to name it.
Yeah.
And kind of laugh about it and put it out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being on the Hope and Hustle podcast. It's an honor to get to know you. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to chat with you too much. I've
Yeah.
cleaned your church a few times for Camp Navigate.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
Yeah, and I think I've seen you there. I think for the past 3 years, we've been cleaning it when they leave.
Oh, cool. Well,
Yeah.
You guys do a really good job.
Thank you. You got a lot of kids there to clean up after it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And the church is beautiful. And again, you're at the First Baptist on Poplar, right?
Yep.
Correct. And is there anything that we can do or anything that anybody who's watching can do to support you, your church, your missions, anything like that?
I'm not a great self-promoter. The thing that I get the most excited about, and it's helpful to my church directly, indirectly. One of the things I've seen changing a little bit in a good way from the time I first started in ministry here in Terre Haute is there's more collaboration than there used to be. And as I think about our community and the issues it has and the positive things that could happen, it's only going to happen if we all work together. And one of the challenges that I've faced in the work that we've done in a lot of different ways is just trying to get people to work together. And often it's our churches that have the hardest time doing that. Yeah. There's a competitiveness that's unhealthy. And there's a great strength we have when we work together. In my experience, when I've gone to my church and I've tried some big things, I've said, hey, what if no kid, we give food to the backpack program. So these kids have food after school. But what about the summer? What if we fed kids all summer long? And then they start real quick. They start doing the math. Well, it's that many kids. It's this big. Well, that's too big. That's too big for us.
Yeah.
And I've tried to tell my church a lot. You're 100% right. This problem's too big for us, First Baptist Church, but it's not too big for us as a community of churches or a community of nonprofits or businesses or individuals in Terre Haute. Yeah. Absolutely. And so the more we can work together and collaborate, the bigger impact we're going to have. And so I would just encourage people, find the thing you're passionate about, find out who's doing it well. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Just find who's doing it well and go say, how can I help? And I think things will grow from there.
Takes a village.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks again, John.
Yeah.
So much. Really appreciate you sitting down with us, sharing. During this process, I actually learned that we have something in common. So I also used to live in Lafayette for a period of time. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was super cool.
And I used to drink and party.
Yeah.
So we have that in common too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks again.
Yeah.
Pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.